Aldermen, Your Excellencies, representatives of the Egyptian COP presidency, our sponsors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. As was just said, I'm Chris Hayward. I'm the policy chairman, which is the political leader here at the City of London Corporation. And it's my very great privilege to welcome you to the second half of today's Net Zero Delivery Summit, and I hope you all had an enjoyable break and lunch. Now, this afternoon, we'll hear from political and business leaders on crucial aspects of the net zero transition, including on sustainability and climate disclosures, exploring how they can help support the mobilization of green finance, on transition finance, sharing reflections and best practice, on changing consumer habits, how demand for green financial products is driving the policy landscape, and on COP28, expectations and ambitions, and what these will mean for financial and professional services. And I'm delighted to say we will have a keynote from the Honourable Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados. But before we arrive at our first panel, I want to share with you the City Corporation's unique perspective as both a representative of the United Kingdom's financial and professional services sector and as the governing body of the City of London and the Square Mile. This unique insight of city and sector, the fusion of global and local, is, I think, unmatched anywhere else in the world, and I spoke about this last year in my address to this summit. We combine the ancient understanding of 1,000 years history with the modern world of financial services. And because of our unique character, we see how local action produces global change and how global change produces local action. In this sense, we are all linked together. We are facing this climate crisis together, and we must find solutions together. As the city poet John Donne told us 400 years ago, no man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. And that is how the global and the local are linked. That is why the global and the local matter. We need both to deliver on net zero. And as the voice of the United Kingdom's financial services sector, the city understands the need for global solutions to this global problem. But we also realize that finding consensus on how to make this net zero journey is not easy. In a way, it's a bit like driving a car, electric, of course, with 3 passengers, where one person says they know a better route, one person says we should have started earlier, and one person is asking, are we there yet? So, at the City Corporation, we believe that sustainable finance is one of the best tools available to policymakers in the urgent race to meet climate targets. But to make the most of net zero, markets from London to Los Angeles, Singapore to San Francisco will need better transparency, comparability, and credibility in the sustainable finance agenda. So what, ladies and gentlemen, does that look like in practice? Well, firstly, we need to reduce frictions. That means, where possible, strengthening policy within an effective and coherent sustainable finance framework. Secondly, we need to nurture innovation. More creativity in the market will create better products for green finance. And thirdly, we need to attract capital and customers. With better products for the market, we then need the clients to ensure a greater uptake. And here at the City Corporation, we are looking to support a globally just transition by working on these 3 areas at home, with the belief that they will help the larger net zero movement abroad. And that is why we support the United Kingdom's green ambitions, so that we can play our part on the global stage. That means positioning the UK as a one-stop shop, a trusted partner for green capital and expertise, helping governments and businesses to meet their sustainability goals. Because of our global ambitions, we acknowledge our duty to achieve net zero here in the square mile. At the heart of the City Corporation's local net zero drive is our ambitious climate action strategy. Adopted in 2020, the strategy has 3 pillars for change for both the City Corporation as an organisation and for the wider square mile. Firstly, support the achievement of net zero emissions. Secondly, build climate resilience. And thirdly, champion sustainable growth. Our climate action strategy is supported by a £68 million investment, making us the first UK governing body to have a fully funded net zero commitment. Across a range of measures, from sourcing renewable electricity to retrofitting buildings, we are taking radical action. And I'm proud to announce that these steps have helped cut our annual carbon emissions by 31% and our energy consumption by 21% since 2018 to 2019. That's what I call delivery in action. But even in taking positive steps along the road to net zero, we've faced immense challenges, which I'd like to share because we are not in a race against each other, but against time. Our challenges can best be summarised by the 3 P's of policy, people, and pounds. On policy, we found that adapting buildings to reduce emissions and enhance resilience is hard without proper net zero guidelines. On people, there are significant skill gaps across the whole project lifecycle of designing, building, and maintaining central London's buildings. I would imagine that many of us here today, and indeed watching online, live in cities, and almost all of us work in cities. According to the Green Finance Institute, the built environment is responsible for 23% of all UK emissions and 39% of global emissions. To meet net zero, we must reform our buildings. And on pounds, mobilising and aligning investment is a significant barrier to change. Decarbonising cities, in our case, the square mile, requires a significant ramping up of investment in both speed and scale. In short, ladies and gentlemen, whether we are working to build sustainable finance frameworks or skyscrapers, funding green products to drive change, or changing the car we drive, we must all take action to achieve net zero. In supporting the transition, it must be a just transition, the theme of our summit today, fair and inclusive for everyone. So today, I ask you to work with us to develop better policy for sustainable finance. Work with us to upskill people so that they have the tools to succeed, and we have buildings that help rather than harm the environment. And work with us to find the investment, the money needed to help companies and countries transition to net zero. Because whether it's small steps or giant leaps, we cannot make them alone. We remember John Donne's words that no man is an island. And 3 centuries after Donne's work, it inspired Ernest Hemingway's title, For Whom the Bells Toll. In that novel, Hemingway wrote lines that neatly encapsulate this summit. Today is only one day in all the days that will ever be. But what will happen in all the other days that ever come can depend on what you do today. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the summit.